The people who knew you 5 years ago should not be able to recognize the person you are becoming. Not because you changed your appearance. Not because you moved to a new city. But because you made a decision so deep, so total, so completely yours, that the old version of you simply could not survive it. That decision has a name. And by the end of this conversation, you are going to make it. Let me ask you something that most people are too afraid to ask themselves. When was the last time you did something, made a choice, took a direction, built something, changed something, purely because you wanted it? Not because it made sense to the people around you. Not because it earned approval from the people who have known you the longest. Not because it fit the image of you that everyone in your life has grown comfortable with. Just because it was yours. Take a moment with that question. Because for most people, and I mean most, not some, the honest answer is uncomfortable. The honest answer is, I don't know. Maybe never. Or maybe so long ago I can barely remember what it felt like. And that discomfort you just felt. That slight tightening in the chest at the recognition of something true. That is where today's conversation begins. Because becoming unrecognizable is not about performance. It is not about a new wardrobe or a new social media aesthetic or a dramatic announcement that you are turning over a new leaf. It is about something far more radical, far more demanding, and far more rewarding than any of those things. It is about the decision to stop building yourself around other people's comfort, and start building yourself around your own deepest truth. And that, right there, is one of the most terrifying and most liberating things a human being can ever do. The weight of other people's versions of you. Here is something nobody talks about honestly enough. The people who love you, your family, your oldest friends, the people who have known you since before you knew yourself, they carry a version of you in their minds. A fixed image. A settled idea of who you are, how you think, what you are capable of, what your place is in the ecosystem of their lives. And that image was built from old data. From who you were at 15. From the mistakes you made at 22. From the version of you that existed before the experiences that changed you, before the reading that expanded you, before the quiet private evolution that has been happening inside you, often invisibly, often without anyone around you noticing. They are carrying a photograph of you. But you have been moving. The problem is, and this is the part that quietly crushes so many people's potential, most of us unconsciously shape ourselves to match the photograph. We walk back into the rooms of our history and we shrink back down to the size we were when the picture was taken. We swallow the new thoughts because they would surprise people. We abandon the new directions because they don't fit the established narrative. We perform the old version of ourselves so convincingly and so consistently that eventually, we forget the new one was ever trying to emerge. Let me tell you about a man named Thomas. Thomas grew up in a small, tight-knit community where everyone knew everyone and everyone knew their place. Thomas's place, as established early and reinforced often, was the funny one. The light-hearted one. The one who didn't take things too seriously and could always be counted on for a laugh. Thomas was funny. That part was true. But Thomas was also, quietly and privately, one of the most deeply thinking people in any room he entered. He read voraciously. He thought about philosophy and human nature and the architecture of a meaningful life with an intensity that he showed almost no one, because showing it would have confused the photograph. Thomas isn't like that. Thomas is the funny one. For years, Thomas performed the photograph. And for years, the deeper part of him, the part that was hungry, serious, searching, went underground. Until the day Thomas turned 38 and realized, with a clarity that felt almost physical, that he had been auditioning for a role in someone else's story for his entire adult life. And that the role did not fit. That day, Thomas began to become unrecognizable. Not loudly. Not dramatically. But with the quiet, patient, absolute conviction of someone who had finally decided that their own truth was worth more than other people's comfort. What becoming unrecognizable actually means. I want to be very precise about this. because the concept is easy to misunderstand. Becoming unrecognizable does not mean becoming cold. It does not mean abandoning the people you love. It does not mean burning your history to the ground and pretending it never existed. What it means, in the deepest, most honest sense, is this. You stop allowing other people's image of you to set the ceiling on what you become. You stop editing yourself in real time based on who is in the room. You stop dimming the parts of you that might make someone uncomfortable. You stop postponing your evolution out of loyalty to a version of yourself that you have already outgrown. You become, in the truest sense of the word, sovereign. The Stoics had a concept they returned to again and again, the idea of living according to nature. Not nature as in trees and rivers, but nature as in your own deepest nature. Your authentic capacity. The full expression of what you were built to think, to feel, to create, to contribute. Epictetus, who began life as a slave and became one of the most powerful philosophical minds in human history, said something that should stop every single person reading this in their tracks. Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. What is in your power is your evolution. Your choices. Your direction. Your willingness to become more than the photograph allows. What is not in your power is other people's reaction to that evolution. Becoming unrecognizable means making peace with that distinction, and then moving anyway. The 3 things you must forget. Now I want to get specific. Because I don't want this to stay philosophical. I want it to land in your actual life. To become unrecognizable, there are 3 things you must be willing, genuinely, completely willing, to forget. The first thing you must forget, their timeline. Everyone around you has a timeline for your life. Conscious or not. Spoken or not. It exists. And it is built entirely from their own experience, their own limitations, their own fears projected onto your future. You should have figured this out by now. At your age, most people have already. I just don't want you to get your hopes up. These sentences, and the 1,000 variations of them that you have absorbed over a lifetime, are not wisdom. They are other people's ceilings, offered to you as if they were your floor. Forget them. There is a woman named Elena who decided at 44 to go back to school and study what she had always loved but had been talked out of pursuing at 22. Everyone in her life had an opinion. Most of those opinions were variations of the same sentence, "Isn't it a little late for that?" Elena enrolled anyway. At 47, she graduated. At 48, she was doing work that made her feel, for the first time in her adult life, completely and entirely herself. Was it late? By whose timeline? There is no universal clock ticking against your becoming. There is only the choice, made today, or postponed indefinitely, to begin. Forget their timeline. Start yours. The second thing you must forget, their definition of success. This one is subtle. And it is one of the most powerful invisible prisons that human beings construct for themselves. We absorb definitions of success from our families, our culture, our peer groups, our social media feeds, and then we spend our lives chasing those definitions without ever stopping to ask whether they are actually ours. Is it money? Is it status? Is it the house, the title, the number of followers, the approval of people whose approval you were taught to value before you were old enough to question why? A man named Robert spent 20 years climbing a corporate ladder with extraordinary discipline and focus. He reached the top. He had the title, the salary, the corner office, the markers of success that his world had taught him to want. He stood at the top and felt nothing. Not happiness. Not satisfaction. Not the sense of arrival he had been promised. Because the ladder had been leaning against someone else's wall the whole time. Becoming unrecognizable requires the radical, courageous act of defining success for yourself. Not in opposition to the world, but in honest conversation with your own values, your own vision, your own deepest sense of what a life well lived actually looks like. That definition will not look like everyone else's. Good. It shouldn't. The third thing you must forget, their permission. This is the deepest one. Somewhere along the way, most of us developed a habit so ingrained we barely notice it anymore. The habit of waiting. Waiting for the nod of approval. The signal that it's okay to proceed. The confirmation from someone whose opinion we have elevated above our own that yes, you are allowed to do this. You are allowed to want this. You are allowed to become this. We wait for permission that was never anyone else's to give. Marcus Aurelius, a man who was literally emperor of Rome, who had more external authority than almost any human being in history, wrote privately, in his journals, about the constant work of returning to his own inner authority. Of not outsourcing his sense of rightness to the crowd. Of acting from his own values rather than seeking the approval of people who would be forgotten by history long before his name was. If the most powerful man in the ancient world had to remind himself daily to stop seeking permission, what does that tell you about how deeply this habit runs in all of us? Stop waiting. You do not need permission to evolve. You do not need a consensus to change. You do not need anyone's blessing to become the fullest, most authentic, most powerful version of yourself. The only permission that was ever required, was always yours. The caterpillar who asked the other caterpillars. There is a caterpillar who, sensing something stirring inside him, goes to the other caterpillars and asks, "Do you think I should go into the cocoon?" The other caterpillars look at him with concern. The cocoon? Why would you do that? You have a good life here. The leaves are plentiful. The branch is stable. We know who you are here. We know your place. Why would you go somewhere dark and strange and alone, and for what? To become something none of us have ever seen. The caterpillar listens. He nods. He goes back to the leaf. For a while. But the stirring doesn't stop. Because the stirring was never a preference. It was a biological imperative. The becoming was coded into his nature from the beginning, and no amount of well-meaning advice from other caterpillars could override what he was built to become. Eventually, he stops asking. He goes into the cocoon. And what comes out, what emerges on the other side of that dark, solitary, misunderstood transformation, cannot be explained to the caterpillars who stayed on the leaf. It simply has to be seen. You are the caterpillar who has been asking for too long. Stop asking. Go into the cocoon. About the photographs other people carry of you. About the timelines that were never yours. About the permission you have been waiting for from people who were never qualified to give it. Something in you has already shifted. Something has loosened. Some quiet, long-held tension has begun to release its grip. But here is what I know about transformation. Letting go creates space. And space, left unfilled with intention, gets filled by default. By the old habits. The old voices. The old gravitational pull of who you used to be, because familiarity is comfortable, and comfort is seductive, and the human brain will always choose the known over the unknown unless you give it something deliberate to move toward. So part 2 is about the deliberate. It is about what you build in the space that letting go creates. It is about the daily, specific, unglamorous, profoundly powerful practice of becoming the person that the people who knew you before will one day struggle to recognize. Let's build. The foundation, identity before action. Most people approach change backwards. They focus on what they want to do differently. The new habit, the new routine, the new behavior. And those things matter. But they are not the foundation. The foundation is identity. Who do you decide you are before the action begins? Let me explain what I mean with a story. There were two men who both wanted to stop smoking. Both had tried and failed multiple times. Both understood intellectually that smoking was destroying their health. Both wanted the same outcome. When offered a cigarette, the first man said, "No thank you, I'm trying to quit." When offered a cigarette, the second man said, "No thank you, I don't smoke." Same action. Completely different identity. The first man was someone who smoked but was attempting a behavior change. The second man had made a deeper decision, a decision about who he was, and the behavior followed naturally from that identity. The second man never smoked again. This is the principle that changes everything. Becoming unrecognizable does not begin with a new routine. It begins with a new declaration, made privately, made seriously, made with the full weight of your conviction, about who you are choosing to be from this moment forward. Not who you are trying to become. Not who you hope to be someday. Who you are. Present tense. Decided. Done. The Stoics called this prohairesis, the faculty of moral choice. The capacity to decide, at the level of identity, what kind of person you are. And they considered it the most sacred human faculty, the one thing that no external force could touch without your permission. Your transformation begins not when you change your behavior. It begins when you change your answer to the question, who am I? Answer it differently. Starting now. The daily practice of becoming. Here is the part nobody glamorizes. And I am going to give it to you straight because you deserve the truth more than you need comfortable fiction. Becoming unrecognizable is boring. Not always. Not in the moments of breakthrough, of insight, of the sudden and visceral recognition that you are no longer who you used to be. Those moments are electric. But between those moments, it is quiet. It is repetitive. It is the same small choices made again and again in the absence of applause, in the absence of visible progress, in the presence of every distraction and temptation and voice telling you that you are being ridiculous. A sculptor named Miguel spent 7 years working on a single piece. 7 years of chipping away at the same stone. 7 years of removing what didn't belong, day after day, in a studio that smelled of dust and effort and no one watching. His friends asked him regularly when it would be finished. His family quietly wondered if he was wasting his life. On the day he finished, he stood back and looked at what the 7 years had produced. It was breathtaking. Not because of a single dramatic moment of inspiration, but because of 7 years of ordinary days where he showed up anyway. The daily practice of becoming unrecognizable looks like this. It looks like the morning you spend in silence before the world gets its hands on your attention. It looks like the book you read instead of the content that was designed to keep you reactive and distracted. It looks like the conversation you don't have, the one where you would have performed the old version of yourself, and instead you let the silence hold something truer. It looks like the boundary you maintain even when maintaining it is uncomfortable. It looks like the choice you make, for the 100th time, for the 1000th time, to act from your values instead of your fears. None of these moments are dramatic. All of them are everything. Marcus Aurelius wrote, in the private journals he never intended anyone to read, in the raw and honest language of a man wrestling daily with the gap between who he was and who he intended to be. Confine yourself to the present. Not the grand future vision. Not the finished sculpture. Just this moment. This choice. This one small act of becoming. Do that today. And tomorrow. And the day after. Until one morning you look in the mirror and realize, the person looking back is someone the old you would have admired from a distance. The river that changed its course. There is a river in the mountains that, over thousands of years, carved an entirely new path through solid rock. Not by force. Not by a single explosive event. But by the patient, daily, utterly relentless pressure of water moving in one consistent direction. The rock did not yield because the water was powerful. The rock yielded because the water never stopped. You are the river. The old version of you, the photograph, the identity that was built by other people's expectations, the ceiling constructed from other people's limitations, that is the rock. And you do not need to be powerful enough to shatter it in a single moment. You just need to keep moving. In one direction. With consistency. With patience. With the absolute, unshakable refusal to reverse course simply because the rock is still there and the progress is not yet visible. The canyon always looks the same, right up until the moment it doesn't. Keep moving. The people who will resist your transformation. I need to talk about this. Because if I don't, and you go through this transformation without being prepared for it, it will blindside you in ways that could derail everything. When you begin to become unrecognizable, not everyone will celebrate it. Some people will be confused. Some will be uncomfortable. And some, the ones whose relationship with you was built on the old version, who benefited in some way from you staying small, staying manageable, staying the person in the photograph, some of those people will actively resist your transformation. They will not always do this consciously. In fact, most of the time they won't. They will simply feel, at some instinctive level, that something has shifted. That the familiar dynamic is changing. That the person they knew how to relate to is becoming someone they don't quite have a script for. And that discomfort will express itself in ways that can feel, if you are not prepared, like attacks. You've gotten so serious. You think you're better than everyone now. I don't even know who you are anymore. Let me tell you about a woman named Grace. Grace had spent her entire adult life being the person everyone leaned on. The one who always answered the phone. The one who always had time. The one who absorbed other people's chaos with endless patience and zero complaint. When Grace began her transformation, when she started protecting her time, using her energy intentionally, building something of her own, the people who had grown accustomed to her unlimited availability were not pleased. They said she had changed. They were right. And Grace had to learn something that was simple in theory and genuinely painful in practice. Other people's discomfort with your growth is not evidence that your growth is wrong. It is evidence that it is real. Because nothing that stays the same makes anyone uncomfortable. Only movement creates friction. Only change creates resistance. And resistance, as any physicist will tell you, is simply proof that a force is being applied. You are the force. Keep applying it. Not with aggression. Not with defensiveness. Not with the need to explain or justify or convince anyone that your evolution is legitimate. Just keep moving. The people who are meant to walk with you into the new version of your life will reveal themselves. They will be the ones who look at who you are becoming, not with confusion or resentment, but with the quiet recognition of someone seeing a person come fully alive for the first time. Hold on to those people. And release, with compassion and without guilt, the ones who needed you to stay small. The Stoic mirror, are you living your values or performing them? Here is a question the Stoics ask themselves daily. A question so uncomfortable and so clarifying that most people avoid it entirely. Am I living my values, or performing them? There is a difference. And it matters enormously. Performing values looks like talking about discipline while avoiding the hard work. It looks like speaking about honesty while editing yourself for approval. It looks like claiming to value growth while doing nothing that genuinely challenges you. It looks like building an identity around an idea of yourself rather than the actual daily practice of becoming that person. Living values is quieter. Less impressive on the surface. It does not announce itself. It simply shows up, in the choices made when no one is watching, in the standards maintained when it would be easier to drop them, in the direction chosen consistently even when the destination isn't yet visible. A young Stoic student once asked his teacher how he would know if he was truly making progress. The teacher said, "You will stop talking about it." Not because silence is superior to expression. But because the person who is genuinely transforming is too busy building to spend their energy performing the construction for an audience. Ask yourself honestly, in the quiet, unobserved space of your own inner life. Am I becoming? Or am I talking about becoming? Because there is only one of those that produces a result. And you know which one it is. The moment of unrecognizability. I want to describe something to you. There will come a moment, not announced, not scheduled, not dramatic in the way you might expect, when you will encounter someone from your past. Someone who knew the old version of you. Someone who carries the photograph. And they will look at you, really look at you, and something in their expression will shift. They won't be able to name exactly what is different. It won't be something as simple as your appearance or your circumstances. It will be something they feel before they can articulate. Something in the way you carry yourself. The way you speak, with a groundedness and a clarity that wasn't there before. The way you listen, with a presence that suggests you are not performing for anyone in the room. The way you occupy your own life, as if you belong in it completely, as if you have finally moved into every room of your own house and locked the door behind you. And they will say, or they will think, even if they don't say it, something has changed about you. And you will smile. Not with superiority. Not with the need for their recognition. But with the quiet, settled, unshakable satisfaction of someone who knows exactly what changed. Everything. And you did it not for them. Not for the moment of recognition. Not for the applause or the approval or the validation of anyone who doubted you along the way. You did it because the person you were becoming was more important than the comfort of staying the same. You did it because your life, the one and only life you have been given, deserved the full, authentic, unedited expression of who you actually are. You did it because one day you looked at the photograph other people were carrying of you, and you decided, with the full force of your conviction, that is not who I am anymore. And then you did the work. Day after day. Quietly. Consistently. Without permission and without apology. Until you became someone they could no longer recognize. Until you became someone you could barely recognize. Until you became, finally, completely, irreversibly, yourself. Final reflection, a word before you go. I want to leave you with something you can carry. Not a list. Not a framework. Just a truth. The most radical thing you will ever do in your life is not climb a mountain or build a company or travel to the far corners of the world. The most radical thing you will ever do, the thing that takes more courage than almost anything else a human being can attempt, is to look at the life you have been living, the identity you have been performing, the version of yourself you have been maintaining for the comfort of people around you. And choose differently. To say, quietly, firmly, without drama. This is not all I am. This is not all I am capable of. And I am no longer willing to live as if it is. That decision, made honestly, made fully, made without the need for anyone's blessing, is the beginning of becoming unrecognizable. Not to them. To yourself. And that recognition of your own becoming, is the only one that was ever worth fighting for. I want you to stay close. Because this is what the Stoic path does. Every single episode. Every single conversation. We come here and we tell the truth. The deep truth. The kind of truth that most content is too polished and too comfortable to touch. We bring philosophy into the real, raw, demanding experience of being a human being who is trying, genuinely trying, to live with intention and power and authenticity. And if that is the kind of content that feeds you, that challenges you, that stays with you long after the video ends, then hit that subscribe button right now.